a little clarification on what not to do. Now, I want to be clear that if you feel like taking a walk in the evening, or you feel like eating something healthy like a piece of fruit versus the old salty snack habit, go ahead and do that. That's fine. Don't think to yourself, well, Dave said don't do anything different right now. I'm going to stick with all my unhealthy habits, even though I kind of feel like doing some new stuff. Go ahead and do some of those new healthy things if you feel like doing them. And again, does it feel comfortable? Does it feel good? Does it not feel forced or I have to? Use that as a guiding principle. But even then, try to be real easy on how much you do. The reason being is we want to make this easy and doable at first, because it's so important as we begin to establish this that our mind is thinking very positively in a can-do versus a can't-do attitude. Because when you kind of get into that can't-do attitude and you start to see things as being overwhelming, your brain really shuts down and filters everything coming in through a negative can't-do filter. So as I come along with new lessons, going through that can't-do filter, my lessons won't be nearly as effective for you as they would be if you're feeling positive, if you're feeling good, if your filter was a can-do filter when you got my lessons. So it's very important to understand that there's this tendency, this real strong tendency that I have, that everyone has, that when we start something, okay, I've got this goal, I want to really work hard towards it, let's go. But in the past, think about it, you've done this before. You've started doing all these new things, you started a diet, you did this, you changed your schedule, and you did this and that. You did so much stuff that became overwhelming, and then it became negative, it became a burden, and then everything went through that can't-do filter, and pretty soon it all snowballed and failed. So we don't want that to happen. So it's so important that we take steps, baby steps. Like I explained, we want to learn to love exercise first and not worry about the eating. Once we learn to love exercise, then we move on to learning to love eating healthy. So once we master those two, then of course weight loss and permanent weight loss becomes automatic. Now, even before we get to learning to love exercise, we have to learn to understand our psychology, understand how our brain works, understand how our subconscious mind controls us in what we do. And those things are so important. Understanding what causes our stress. Because we certainly can't have stress out of control and try to learn to love exercise. We have to learn all these foundational things first before we can move on to these other things. So we'll move on to those, but having patience and understanding what not to do initially is extremely important. So we're going to take our time, we're going to enjoy the process and be successful, and that is the path to permanent success. Let me leave you with one final message. Permanent change becomes. It is never forced. Permanent change becomes because it's what your brain wants to do. Anything you do is because your brain wants to do it. So any permanent change must become what you want to do rather than be forced to be what you want to do. It can't be forced. It must become. And it will only become if you enjoy it and you want to do it and you positively reinforce it. Then your brain will want to do it, and that's when it becomes a permanent habit. This is Dave Erickson. Live by choice.